anything, it's just a workshop because I didn't deliver the written notice as required because there was no action agenda items listed. We were just going to attempt to recap the primaries that were just held and see if we can figure out ways to make them better because everybody's got a little different perspective of what goes on during that process. We're attempting to live stream this, but unfortunately the provider is having fiber optics problems, so our Commissioners Court meeting did not get out, and this one is not going to be getting out. It'll be recorded, it's just not being live streamed. But anyway, I'll call the meeting to order. I'm not going to bother even terminating quorum because, again, we're not taking any action here today. That's not the purpose of that at all. So with that said, obviously a lot of people here are very interested and involved in that election cycle. And perspective, I'll start by saying I think we've all known all along that we really have been committed to the integrity of the process. So citizens are confident when they go vote, their vote's going to be counted, it's going to be a right place. All of the concerns about voter security, I think we've been addressed as to the fullest extent possible that can be implemented here. And I don't think anybody has any questions with that. The only concerns and that I've had, and it's been from multiple places, is the speed of which results are started or delivered and how they're delivered and at what time period they're delivered. But with that said, I found myself down here the night of that election just because of the rain, the threats of rain, and the fact that we got over $1 million worth of taxpayer equipment that's electronic floating around out there. I thought I'd come down and see if I could offer any assistance in trying to get that stuff back in here. And during the course of that, I made some observations of my own. That's probably knew that were there, but living them and seeing them just brought it to real life. One of them was, and I'll start with one of the things, is the fact that you have election judges that have been there. I guess most of them get to their poll about 6 o'clock in the morning to get them set up. Of course, they've been there in the afternoon. The equipment's been delivered. They get there, get set up, get ready for the 7 o'clock opening. And then by the time it gets, 7 o'clock comes around, they put out their markers, they let everybody vote. You know, it could possibly be 14, 15 hours into the day at that point in time. And then when the last person gets out, they're stuck with the decommissioning process, have to load up that equipment, get it in that car, get it down here. And I just saw a lot of exhausted people, significantly exhausted. Some of them are challenged a little bit like I am with the aging at times, and so the energy levels and things. And part of it you could see, I think, in the fact that they were mentally tired too, because significant numbers showed up down here that had not brought in all of the equipment on the list and had to go back to their polling places and get 1 or 2 items that weren't included, so their equipment set out back till they got back, and then they checked it into the box. I don't know what goes on inside the room, but that was just a perspective from watching just pure logistics of a bunch of exhausted people that had given everything they had that day conducting the election, and having to load everything up and get it back in so we can start the count process. So I'm open to suggestions how to fix that, including maybe some dedicated county employees that are trained, that are assigned a couple of polling places, and that's their job, is to be there to assist that judge, get it shut down, get it loaded up, and get it back here as quickly as possible to try to shorten a little bit of that time frame that it takes. But with that said, that's what kind of prompted this, and obviously during the course of that night, since we had a very significant U.S. House of Representative election here that was drawing a lot of attention. I did hear some comments that when I attended that finally about 10:45, about which that point in time we still have a couple of boxes that had not arrived here that I was aware of. So that prompted this discussion From here, Vaughn and I have spoke about it some. I think there's been a lot of discussion, but I thought if everyone gets in the same place, gives the perspective from their piece of how this process works, let's just discuss if there's some options, some things that we can do to solve the only complaint that I've had about it is the fact that they would like to have results, or at least part of the results, released earlier than the night than as late as they were the other night. And it seems like each election has its own little nuances that are little quirks, from power outages to gas leaks. I can't remember all the things that happened at the various polling places. And you know, we appreciate those businesses, churches, whatever they do, allowing us to use that because it's disruptive for them. They're allowing us to use those places. The election judges are people that are dedicated to this. They're not doing it for the money. You know, I don't know what the pay is for that day, but it's not enough. But still, they're doing it out of their sense of civic duty, and we appreciate that. And I saw Bono commenting the other day what the average age is for that sort of thing. So maybe we need to get a little bit of recruitment effort. So,
Judge, one thing I want to mention, you kind of raised this, is the locations that offer their buildings for us to use. I think, Ron, you could help us do this. When they offer it for public use for an election, they have to allow electioneering. They do not have the ability to tell folks not to put signs up. They shouldn't do that. Granted, candidates shouldn't be damaging people's property, and I don't mean to suggest that that's allowed, but we still have locations, church, that is taking up signs, destroying candidate signs. Both sheriff's candidate signs were damaged and threatened to be thrown away at one of the polling locations. So we need to address that. If they want to electioneer at a location, they have to be allowed to do it. It's not private property on the day of an election. And so if you could help us get that word out to these folks, well, I'd appreciate it, because in one particular case, the location, the workers there, it wasn't the workers actually, it was the church members, damaged people's private property. Theoretically, they could have been charged with a crime, not just a federal election law, but just plain old damaging personal property.
Well, you could probably help me with the language that we could submit to them, because I know a lot of the churches, which are a blessing to us to be able to use
Sure.
the polling places, because we don't like to be in the schools with security and so forth. But the churches are concerned about the 501 losing that, you know, and so if we can find the language that will help them feel much more comfortable.
And I understand that, but you're not preaching from the pulpit. You're not can't supporting the candidate from the pulpit, which is where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
What you're doing is offering your location to the federal, and just like the school district's rules don't apply during election day for access. So an example that maybe will help is there are folks who are not allowed near schools because of past behavior.
Right.
But if it's a polling location, they have to be allowed to vote.
And
So
it's
federal
my
law
understanding-
supersedes it.
It's my understanding now that if we are holding in a school, we have to have a special entrance.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So
So
yes.
federal law understands that there are these limitations that exist, but, and quite frankly, I mean, I'll tell you, it would be much better for us if they would simply say, we're not comfortable with that. We'll find another location. As much as I would hate to lose our traditional locations, but you have to be allowed to do the traditional electioneering. It's part of the tradition, you know, the folks with their signs, and not to mention the fact that when people are standing outside or put signs up outside an election location, that's the best advertising we have to where to go vote, because you know exactly where to go vote, because there's people in the public. So anyway, if you'd help us address that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as an attorney as well as the chair of the Republican side. But quite frankly, I've had this conversation with that one location, and I don't know what to do.
You'll have to remind me which one it is. I know one we used to have, but you'll have to remind me that.
I won't do it in a public meeting. I'll talk to you later about that.
well, with that said, y'all just raised, I think, just as indicative of 2 points that the general public and even those of us are involved in this were not aware of the challenges And the difficulty in conducting the big show on one day, multiple people in multiple different locations, it is a extremely difficult task to do, because you're basically only doing it. And most of you that especially train on digital things, if you don't use an app on a regular basis, you get a little bit rusty, and all of a sudden you've got game day one day. So it's just indicative of the little situations that come up in trying to conduct this.
There's one of the things that folks kind of forget, or maybe they kind of know, but they don't really know, is we have to have accessibility to every location. So that has to be ADA compliant, it has to have internet access, people have to be able to get in and out and have additional parking. That right there strikes off 80% of the locations in Montgomery County that we think you might be able to have an election at. The parking lot can't be gravel, because then how do you get through the parking lot to get to the building? There's just all of these, you have to have lighting that's outside lighting so that people can find the doors, because it starts in the morning and it stays till evening.
Well, they've done a great job over the
I think
years.
they've got good
recruiting
locations.
and people that continue to sign up, so we appreciate that. I guess the best way to recap, I know there were some things that we talked about that occurred in this last election cycle inside the room, which I call it, which I don't go in back there. Do you want to recap that about some of the challenges that?
I made these up for you guys to refer to, and I have a few extra, but not enough for everybody here. It was a challenging day, to say the least. We did experience some equipment issues, which I always hate to publicize, because I want our voters to have confidence in the equipment. But in the last legislative session, they mandated that all of the e-poll books, which is what we use to check our voters in, are now having to be certified. And to do that, the vendors all had to take their product to the Secretary of State's office, present it. Secretary of State came back and said, here's what we need it to do. And they had that so few months to implement those changes and get them ready. So our vendor has been notified of the issues that we had, and they consisted mostly of the laptops locking up, either as the voters were choosing the language they wanted to use or as they were signing. So God bless the poll workers that we have out there. They were instructed on what to do to continue to check voters in and so forth, and they kept going. But, when you start encountering those things through the day and having people get upset and so forth, that lengthens and makes you even more tired and frustrated throughout the day. We also had several polls, for whatever reason, that did not get the HART voting equipment plugged in or get the power strips turned on. So the batteries started dying, and that caused the equipment to go down. So now you've added that to the day that they're having, on top of having a lot of voters turn out and so forth. I do appreciate the opportunity to look at this and to do some studying that I did, and to talk to several of the other counties that were involved and so forth. And what I presented to you is some of the laws that we feel like we have to comply with on election day, both with security and with balancing and so forth. And that's been my biggest thing, is to try to balance. And so in visiting with some of the poll workers, and visiting with some of the other counties and so forth, I'm beginning to look at some of the things that we might could do, but I also want to call your attention to the back page, where I've captured the times that we had our last voter check-in at each of the polling locations, what time they arrived at the dock, which in some cases is an hour, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes and so forth. What time we got through with checking their paperwork, which is the REL time, the release time, and then what time we read the V drive. I was disappointed to find myself that the very first poll that came in, there was like a 45-minute delay in getting that V drive read from when we released them. So I talked to staff, and on election night now, we're also required to do what's called election night reporting to the Secretary of State. And it's not just the top offices now, it's all the way down the ballot. So you know how long the ballots were, including the propositions. We had to submit all of those. And they expect the minute you run early voting to go record those, and so that's what staff gets. So that's one change we can make, is having the person that's gonna be doing that ENR recording, so that my staff that's running the V drives can keep on running the V drives and so forth. The thing about it was how long it takes from the last check-in, and you gotta understand too, this check-in is when they were checked in. That's not when they're through voting. That's just when they've got the label to go get their ballot, okay? And a person can sit there. I remember one election where we had a little lady that came in and polls closed at 5 o'clock, and it was 7 o'clock before she was through voting. Vanessa and I stayed with her until she was through voting, because once they're in that booth, they have as long as they like to vote. So I can't really tell you what time they finished voting, but I can tell you what time they were checked in. So I had the staff take the time to set up a poll in our office, pretend that they were at a polling location. And you got to understand, we work with this. We're not like our blessed poll workers that do it, you know, every 4 or 6 months, however long it might be. And it took us an hour and 15 minutes to not only do what we have to do security-wise, which is close everything up, get our numbers, close things up, seal them, record those seal numbers, get them ready to transport and so forth, and then allow approximately 15 minutes to get transported to the office. So that's leading me to look at things that we can maybe change to help them in getting things done at the poll. And Judge, I welcome the idea of having somebody that can be dedicated to go out there and help them, maybe even transport just the controller and the numbers to where we can take that in at the office and go ahead and get started in processing the results. I think that's one thing that we could possibly do to help increase the speed with which we're doing things. I talked to Ector County, Midland County, and Hood County, which were the other 4 largest counties in that district, and kind of asked them some of the things that they did. And Ector County has an interesting dynamic where they have just the signature sheets or the labels that from the voters being checked in, and they have people dedicated to count those labels so that they know what number they should be getting off of the voting equipment. You know, you have things through the day that will affect that a little bit. Somebody walks out without casting their ballot, and they're still checked in, you know, just different things like that will affect the counts. But I think we can maybe work on the paperwork where it would be a little bit easier for our poll workers not to have to dedicate so much time to trying to balance, if you will, to the penny. But that we get the numbers that we know we're close to being able to hit what we need to when we run the V drive and get the count. Because we're by law not supposed to proceed with just running V drives if we have, let's say we have 30 more votes on a V drive than what we show voters checked in. Because then we're supposed to be going to hand count by law. The other thing that we experienced on election day, which our vendor is also working on, is that not all of the voter check-in units queued to the main system. So we normally take the count that we show of voters checked in for each polling location off of our administrative side. And because there were, you'll see on this list that I've got you looking at, the red ones, you'll see the number of voters that we had on election day versus the number of voters that we have now that we've been able to queue those units down. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units that didn't completely queue down all the voters checked in on election day. So there's no way we would have been able to look at that and say, okay, we balanced right on the money. We knew those issues were out there, but we didn't necessarily know how many voters were queued to be able to balance that. So we went ahead and proceeded with that. Another county actually hires their party chairs and 2 clerks from each party, or 1 clerk from each party, and they go to work on election day. I don't think we want to go that far because I don't think an elected official is supposed to be serving in that capacity, but it opens up different ideas and talking to these folks and seeing what we can do. So the things that I like the best is trying to figure out ways that we can help our poll workers to where they're not having to worry about balancing exactly. 10:45 was one of the polls. The other one came in a little after 11, and I was told that they were trying to balance. And what I always have said in training, which they're learning a lot during training, they're learning how to do the rules of processing people in your polls, they're learning how to operate the equipment, they're learning a massive amount of stuff when we do training. But I always say, if you're not balanced by 8:30, bring it in, we'll help you balance. Well, these folks, one of them was a new judge, One of them was an experienced judge that's a type A. Thank God we've got type A people out there that want to make sure they're balanced. She was looking for one vote or one difference. So, and I'm in the middle of everything going on. It's no excuse, and it sounds like I'm making excuses, but you know, on election day, you just put the next thing that you feel like is the most important thing in front of you. And I didn't realize it was quite that late to even call and say, where are you, bring it on in. So that's something I've got to do better, is to stay on top of where my polls are and who's not coming in, so that I can give them a call and say, we need to find out what's going on, can you bring it on in, and we'll see what we can do. But those are some things that I think we can do, maybe having somebody dedicated to go out there and help them, or at least go and pick up what we need to be able to get the results out.
Well, again, that's what we're going to do. I mean, we're going to start our budget process. We need to try to recruit some county employees that are not normally associated with it, with flex time, this and that. And to me, instead of comprehensively giving them training for everything, it's about just the decommissioning process. And just to give them some support and physically be able to move that bulky equipment back, because some of those, it was a challenge to do. And so that's what I'm hoping from the chief budget officer for the county, is to, if we need to address that going forward, because that was something that was obvious to me.
Donna, tell me this, the dock time at Angela Bible was 9:45. The V drive was read at 11:03. Tell me why it's an hour and 15 minutes between the time the thing hits the back door of the collection office and it's read.
I don't know, and I know that's not a satisfactory answer, but I would suspect that we were entering the election night results.
Why can't we read the V drive before you make absolutely certain that the number on the outside is the same as the number on the inside?
As I mentioned in part of the stuff that I got from the Secretary of State, let me see which page this is. Section 7 of page 2. After uploading all precinct results to the central accumulator system, the election official must verify and document that the accumulation total number of votes cast matches the number of signatures on the combination form. If there's a discrepancy, the presiding judge of the counting station, in conjunction with some central counting station manager, shall determine if a further audit is necessary. So that's what we've been striving for.
Right. I understand that, but what it says is it should verify it. It doesn't say that what to do. What do you do if you don't verify it? I mean, what if it doesn't verify? If one number is different than the other, you still have ballots you have to count.
We do have ballots that we have to count, but Jeff, I'm sorry, Mr. Betty, I didn't pull the election code for that, but I believe it talks about that then we're supposed to start hand counting, which is going to be a nightmare, as you can imagine. Results would be days and days, because you have to print the cast vote records and so forth.
I don't believe that's true. And
Okay.
I think you and I are going to have to argue about this, and maybe we'll have to argue with the Secretary of State's office, because fundamentally what you're saying is that we can't get results in this county until 11 or 12 o'clock, and yet all over the state of Texas, people get their results much earlier. So are they not following the law?
I think they're following the law the way that they feel like they need to do things.
Okay.
And I'm willing to change that. That's what I'm saying. We can explore like Ector County did, where we just count the signatures. If the signatures are close to what we're supposed to be getting off of that B drive, then we'll go.
I understand you're concerned about there being a discrepancy, but I think you're doing the same thing you just told us that Type A's doing.
I am all in at that.
And you and I, we've talked about this, and I don't think anyone has any doubt that you're careful. But, you know, when I use the analogy that this is, we sat down for a meal at 7 o'clock. We ordered our meal, and we wanted a good one. And you gave us the perfect meal. The only problem is it came in at midnight. At a certain point, we're not hungry anymore. We're done. And that's what's happening on these elections. It's not that we're not, you know, absolutely certain of the quality of the meal you're putting together. It's just too damn late. I don't have a nice way to put it. And so what I'm going to tell you is your care at following these procedures, I think, is admirable, but I've got to dynamite you loose. I've got to make you stop being so dang careful. Because if you have a discrepancy on one vote out of 1,200 votes, they're supposed to have 1,200 and you have 1,199, we can't hold up the entire election process while everybody scrambles around for one ballot.
I agree with that.
So let's document that and count that dadgum thing and then get the numbers out. That's what I'm saying. So if you disagree with that, then let's go all the way to the top if we have to. Let's go all the way to the top and get the Secretary of State, Governor, to tell us which one of us is right. Because I'm telling you, you can count those things. I'm telling you. I have a piece of paper on a wall that says I can read the law. I swear to God. I'm telling you, you can count those things, Mona. And I appreciate your care. I really do. But we got to get past that. Because 10 votes, let's say there's 10 votes discrepancy, would that have affected a single election in Tonkin County?
Not in this particular election.
Yeah. And we're not talking about losing those ballots. We're not talking about never finding them. We're just saying that on election night, we're going to count them. And then we're going to make sure we get it all figured out afterwards. Why can't we do that?
I'm working towards it, Mr. Betty. I'm working towards it. You have to know it's hard for me to let go.
I understand.
My
Of all
dedication.
people, I believe I know it's hard for you to let go. I've been arguing with
It's hard
you
for
for
me to
10
let
years
go,
over this.
To be sure of that.
10 years ago, I was elected as county chair, right? And I came in, and the first thing I said, we got to get our results out quicker, right?
You have to, I'll take the word for that.
And every election after that, we've argued about this.
I don't remember arguing about it every election.
Well, we've discussed it, and I've tried to get those results out quicker, right? So I'm trying to be patient, but this is my last time as county chair, and the one thing I'd like to do when I leave here is have our get elections out a little quicker. I think it can be done, and I like I said, I commend you for your care, but you got to stop. You got to find a place where the law allows you to count, and then you go back and verify and correct and fix.
Isn't the canvas, isn't that really what it's for?
Traditional.
Is to figure out if there's any discrepancy?
Well, and like the section you were just quoting, it says that you shall verify that the vote totals on the electronic media match the vote totals on the printed results tape if applicable. It doesn't say you'll do it before you count them. It just says you'll verify it. So I understand, and I want us to have good numbers, but there's a point at which, and we all know that the election night results are not the final results, because we've got mail-in ballots, the military mail-ins that can still come in, we've got provisionals that have to be, dealt with at the last minute kind of stuff. We all know that, so I think it's time for me to be really mean to you and say, this has got to happen. This has got to happen, or it's now a management issue. And I think it is a management issue at this point. And we've talked about that, and everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. And Judge, one of the things I think, quite frankly, and I don't mean to be rude, but it's kind of my nature, I guess, but she needs somebody to manage her dang office. She's too nice to the people that she works with. She has wonderful people, and they're worthy of being nice to. They're good people. But sometimes you need somebody who's not thinking about whether this ballot is the right ballot or that ballot is the right ballot. You need somebody who's just watching the flow of the office, watching the staff, and while Bonna's dealing with some election issue related to this polling place or that, they're saying, we haven't heard from Southgate, it's already 7:45. And that's what I'm offering and suggesting is that at this point, we need to look at the actual structure of the office. Because I think we've got way too much that Bonna's supposed to be responsible for when it's election night. 364 days out of the year, I'm not worried about her office and how she manages it. But on election night, we're asking her to do too much. That's what I think. Now, and my concern is, okay, so let's get somebody else in there that can do it better. Let's get rid of Bonna and get somebody else. What's their stuff? What's their skills going to be? If their skills are management, but they don't have the understanding she has of election law and the equipment, we're just going to have different problems, and that may be valid issues, security issues. That's not a solution. That's just reacting. But I do think there is a solution that involves having somebody in the office that has better management skills, that's focused on the management of the office during the election time. And I don't mean the staff particularly. I really mean the management of everybody, because you've got volunteers, you've got county employees that are only helping on election days, and we need somebody, frankly, a little higher up in the chain of command that can stand in there and say, okay, I understand y'all have an issue, Bonna's busy, do this. And that's what we don't have going on. Because 6 times in less than an hour, when I was there, and yes, I am there on election night, folks, and I fully understand the equipment and what's going on, 6 times I heard staff and volunteers say, well, let's ask Bonna. And went out. We cannot clone her 6 times. So we have got to find a way to get somebody in there that can say, no, you're a paid, trained employee, make your best decision and get down the road.
And that's an implementation issue, so obviously it's not totally going to be within our control. But again, identify some things going forward, obviously.
Right. That's why I'm dumping it on you instead on
Judge Floyd and the committee. November will be my 12th year doing early voting. And so I feel like I'm worthy enough for y'all to hear me. This last election, I was one of the election judge for the Republican Party. And if Philip and myself, the Democrat judge, if we can't handle it, yes, we go to Bonna. But we try to handle what goes on in that polling place. On the election night at my polling place, I was one off. And first of all, I told 2 people, go through the labels, make sure that we don't have an extra label. And they go through the labels, no, there's not an extra label. Well, when I go through the labels, you go the first one, you turn it over and you count that one. Next one, you turn it over, you count that one. Well, guess what? On one of them, there was a label missing. That's where I was off. So I balanced. And that's what every judge wants to see. But I had 2 people going through those, looking, and neither one of them pointed out, hey, we're missing a label. So it's not my fault that 2 of these people didn't see it. They weren't trained to see it, which I try. And I know I'm lucky. I am the judge out at Great Creek. And the judge before me trained me very well what to do ahead of time to get my paperwork done. And 9 times out of 10, the ballot board has a bet on who brings their equipment in first. And it's usually me, but I didn't win this time. But, and it's not that I want to be first, it's just I want to be good. I want to be good because of Bonna. Because the first election 12 years ago that I worked, I was so impressed with her staff, the way she treated people. I don't care how many times I asked the same stupid question, she answered it in a really nice way, made me feel like I wasn't that stupid. So, and that's one reason why in the next election I asked to work again. And her staff, I'm sorry, but people don't have a clue what goes on in that office months before to put on an election. And I'm talking about hard work. You know, those machines have to be tested and retested and retested and retested. And I've done that. I know how secure our machines are. So when people have fear, I said, you don't have to fear that in Congress County because our machines are secure. And yes, we had new judges this time, and some of the judges, and we encourage them to bring in their paperwork. If they don't balance, bring it in. Because I'll never forget one time when I was out at the Church of God on Edmond Boulevard. It's when we had the paper ballots, and I was counting those paper ballots. Being a bookkeeper for 15 years, I was counting my ballots because I wanted to balance. Bonnie called me and she said, "Hey, you're not counting those ballots, are you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm trying to ballot. Just bring them in and, we'll do that." So, I knew just to fold everything, that's all she had to do, fold it up, brought everything in. And some of these judges don't realize that they can do that, even though they've been told, if you don't balance, just fold it up and bring it in. They have people there that will help you balance. But that's not Bonna's fault. We try to train people, or she does, that we think will be a good worker. And I know the only thing that I have problems with, and thank God I have people in my precinct, in my polling place that are computer literate, is which icon to, even though we were trained, and it's different in the election office than out in the field, because we have to get online. We have these things that are called gizzards that we have to hook up to. And it's knowing which thing to press on to get our gizzard to give us the information that we need to get online with the election office. That's one thing that I need to work on as an election judge, to know exactly, and I'm going to try my darndest by the November election to be an expert on that. Because I'm going to go in and I'm going to practice, and I'm going to practice, and I'm going to practice.
Mrs. Lacy, are you saying I don't know enough about the election to
No,
understand?
I'm just saying.
Seems to be what you
No,
implied, didn't
I'm
you?
just saying that, you don't, most people, I'm not saying Jeff Betty, I'm saying most people do not have a clue how hard these people work.
I think most people do, Mrs. Lacy, but at 9:25, Edgar County released its final report. 9:25.
I realize that, Jeff, and I realize that Ivana and I have talked about it, what we can do, as a group to make changes, and I think she is really trying to make changes.
I'm glad to hear that, but from her own sheet, the dock time, Angelo Bible 9:45, Belmore Baptist 10:45, Calvary Baptist 9:50, Southgate 11:30, MHMR 8:55 was the dock time, 9:12 was the read time. But more importantly, what this doesn't have on there is when the world knew about these times.
Well, also, what doesn't have
I'm
on there,
sorry, I
how many
wasn't quite
people
done.
I had in
The
line.
Secretary of State's office had 5,900 votes cast and counted in Tom Green County at 11 o'clock.
Okay, I had over 60 people in line that I had cram in my polling place to vote in. And so, guess what? That puts
I
me
get what
over
you're
at
saying, and your defense of Anna is admirable, but the point is still the same point. When I read a time, and the V drive was read, and that wasn't actually put on the internet, it wasn't put on the Secretary of State's website, and we didn't know what those results were, at a certain point, it's kind of like that dinner. I don't care what trouble the cook had. All I want to know is, are we going to get food out tonight?
And I think
what's
Bonnet
happening
is going
is
to
we're
make some
getting the
changes
food out at
to
midnight.
help you do that.
Well, no, you're not helping me do anything, because what I'm telling you is, and I'm telling you this, Judge, I'm the chair one more time for sure, and if we don't have substantial change in the office, substantial reassurance that something different is going to happen at the next election, because I've been talking about this now for 5 elections, then the election for the Republican Party is not going to be held with the county elections office. We have to have not just security of the ballot, but a result that matters. It gets done in a reasonable time. I would hate to remove that funding from the county, because I understand part of your calculation, your budget process, is that elections will be run and you will get refunded by the Secretary of State's office, but it's not a threat, it's a promise. I already threatened once, and nobody paid attention to me when I said I wasn't going to sign the contract last time. So this time I'm telling you now, Judge, as the boss of this county, and as the person who pays the salary of the employee we're talking about, and I'm telling the rest of the election commission if they ever are here, that I'm telling you, we won't use the county elections office if I don't see changes that substantially reassure me.
Well, good luck, because there's tons of judges back behind me that we will not work ever
Don't threaten me,
again.
Ms. Lacy.
No, I'm not
I'm the one that
threatening you,
points
Jeff.
you.
I am not threatening you,
You
Mr.
did.
Betty.
I'm telling you what I'm
just
gonna
telling
do.
you.
Ma'am, I'm done responding to you. Please, if you have further comments, make them, but I'm done responding.
Good.
We're done with you two.
Judge, I've made my statement.
You've made your statement, she's made her statement. Do we kind of have that out of the way now?
Yeah.
The complaints that I hear is they don't understand, and honestly, I don't understand, is why the early voting results cannot be released shortly after the polls close. Or, I guess, the last voter has checked in. I don't know legally when they can be released, but what's an impediment to that early voting being counted and certified prior? And the second thing is releasing partial or as 2 or 3 boxes come in that do not have problems with it, releasing those results. Because honestly, most elections, the early voting is going to indicate where they're headed. And everyone that's sitting around with their election parties is anxiously awaiting those. It can certainly set the tone for the night for them. So those are the main concerns that I have heard from it.
Yes, sir, and we have strived to improve early voting, and I believe, if I recall, on election night this last time, Jeff was congratulating us with the Standard Times Reporter for getting the early voting results as early as we did. However, that said, this programming this ballot this time was different. This is the 3rd time we've used this equipment that we've got now. Programming the primary ballot was different, and so the staff, we made a mistake in when we could start tabulating, and we said 7 o'clock. And so that did not allow us to run the B drives from early voting until 7 o'clock had come. We will make that change for sure. We'll always have it to where we can start tabulating. In fact, in the past, we've been able to tabulate 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon and have them ready to go as long as we've got everything in and ready to go. So we're working on that for sure, and we have made improvements with that, I feel like. As to election day, we do have a policy that as they're coming in, once we have 5 or every 30 minutes, we're running the results. And so you'll see on the C drive times that we were trying to run them as we got them in. There was a delay in some of them, and I'll grant you that, but we are trying to get those run as soon as we can. And based on this conversation, while I'm not going to circumvent the law, no matter how much that's asked, I'm not going to circumvent the law, we will try to make the improvements to where we can get a count of what we expect to hit, and we'll run those speed drives, we'll pull those. If we can get some people to help us get those controllers in, because as I said, you look at the last check-in time to the time that they got to the dock, and there's quite a delay there. If we can have dedicated people that can go out and get that equipment and get it into us with the numbers that we need, then we can go ahead and start running those. And we can hopefully improve the speed with that.
I have a question. Is it against state law or anything for an elected official to help with the election if they're not on the ballot?
It is against the law for an elected. I'll have to review that code, Ms. Robles, but the last time I looked at it, an elected official was not supposed to be working the polls or helping with an election.
Because I've offered lots of times.
Yes, ma'am.
So.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate it.
Well, I may have invalidated the election results because I helped them for 3 hours.
But yes, we do try to release as many, and once we run 5 or every 30 minutes, we try to run those results.
Well,
So why did the Secretary of State's website still have 5,900 votes cast at 11 o'clock?
We didn't have the staff to go sit down and enter those into the Secretary of State's ENR report. I have 5 staff members. 2 of those, by law, you have to have 2 people that count when you're counting ballots. I have another one that was helping with the phones, because just because 7 o'clock hits, the phones don't quit ringing and people don't quit calling. I have another staff member that's helping with receiving the kiosks and getting those up and making sure that we're trying to get the votes downloaded. And then I'm running around trying to help with different things. We do hire outside staff. We do have people that come in and help us with different parts of that. But now I'm going to have to find a person that I can dedicate to going and entering the state results as well.
Why is that you're counting 925 and you're not?
Because they do things differently.
I want things done differently.
I understand that. And as far as the funding, Judge, we're only getting what we build. We're not gaining any funds by contracting with the parties for the primary. Ms. McGill, did you have something else?
Could we, as election committee members, come down and help, when stuff's coming in to assist your other 5 people with something?
I don't believe so as an elected official.
Okay.
I'm present because it's my election. It's a primary, and the state law actually was changed to allow county chairs to attend. So I was present till 9:30. I've been involved with elections here for 20 years as a poll watcher and otherwise. My wife has also been on the ballot board. We're intimately familiar with the process that's going on. The problem is the process is not getting the job done in time.
Well, again, the logistical part, it sounds like to me we're down to a couple of things. Obviously, just the logistics of getting the B drives and the equipment back.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In between there, it just kind of alludes a little bit back to what Mr. Betty was saying. Is it somebody that's keeping up with it? Because I did stick my head in the door and asked 2 or 3 times if anybody had talked to Southgate. And nobody knew anything, if they'd even tried to call them or not. I think that's an error. That somebody is not, for the support of those judges, that somebody's not available to be there in a few minutes' notice that is aware of that process to assist them. Okay, I think they need that support. And then it may be, if we draft somebody else, that their primary purpose is to take those results and get them released and on the Secretary of State's side, somebody that you're confident with, that that's their job. They don't get drug into anything else, unloading equipment. That is their job, is to do that. And I think those things would help a great deal with the only problem we're having is speed.
Yes, sir.
Nobody seems like they have a question about the integrity. And again, I don't want to sacrifice the integrity, but I believe that the public would appreciate results were at least with a disclaimer, there's still some vetting that has to be done, and the may change. And, I don't know if you could say, we believe they're probably within 5% because of the little nuances of the count. But to give, I think they're just looking for some indication which direction. You know the situation. People have spent hours upon hours over months and stressed, and their whole family going, and this is game night, and there's a lot of tension in the air. And they're looking for an answer, so I think early voting results being released as quickly as possible, and again, making sure that if we know the count inside that room, make sure it's out there as quickly as possible. And everybody's going to different places to see them now, the results. You can tell that. Everybody's, people are at their back door, people are watching Secretary of State, they're looking for those numbers. And so I think you clean that up, and I think, a lot of your problems are solved. And like I say, I'm certainly willing to see if we can locate within the county 10 or 12 people that are willing to spend the time to train, to not get clouded up with anything other than the decommissioning and assisting getting them back here.
I think that'd be great.
And get the support that, like the people that are willing to do this year after year.
Yeah, Ms. Lacy even offered that if she came in earlier and there was some people having difficulty, she would work with them. And I think I'll find that with a lot of my blessed coworkers, that they're willing to help. And I welcome what you're saying, Judge.
Okay. All right, could we have within a couple of weeks, a 1, 2, 3, what do you think you need? The number of personnel and
Like to have dedicated folks to go out and help them.
it's how many you need and what their function's going to be, so I can, and recruiting, try to tell them what they're going to be doing.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
In past years, didn't we have like deputies, sheriff's deputies that went and picked the equipment up.
There are some counties that do use the deputies to both deliver and to pick up, but I think our sheriff's department is so stretched that I've never really approached
The
that.
election judge still has to be present and maintain custody of it.
And that's something that I did when the judge and I kind of talked about this a little bit, that we would have to come up with some kind of chain of custody transfer and so forth. And I've even in my mind got to where we have a code that the person that's picking it up can give the poll worker or the judge that they are authorized to be picking it up and that they've been hired by us. You don't want just anybody walking in and saying, here,
Not careful, you end up building another paperwork chain, and then you.
well, I'm just saying,
Well,
it's
this
got a
fee-
password and
this
this
fee
is a
drive or
password.
whatever, what is it? Is it a
It's
robot?
it's like a little thumb drive, and
Okay.
it's inside the controller, and it's got seals on the compartment that it's in there, and it's under a lock and key, and the judge does not even have that key. We're the only ones that have that key. There are some counties that allow the poll workers to transport just the V drives or the NPVs or whatever the media is that you're recording the votes on. I don't want to take the risk of pulling those V drives.
It says the chain of custody has to be maintained. It doesn't say define exactly what that is. But one of the reasons that we have the system we have is that way it would take a mission impossible kind of thing for somebody to change or to adulterate the votes. It's a security measure, and I don't think it's strictly required if we have help carrying the boxes and if we get the polls closed down in a reasonable time and get folks checked out at their locations. The problem is the election judges are tired. They have worked a long day, and we have got to streamline those processes at the end of the day. And if the numbers don't come up, they just don't come up, and get them on the road. You know, it's one of those deals, and all of us when we were young, if we get a job, I managed a pizza store in college. And the first few weeks, you come up and you're $1.50 off, and you just stay there till 5 o'clock in the morning trying to find that $1.50. After you've done it a year or two, you go, can't find the $1.50. And then you come back the next day when you have a clearer mind, and usually you find it the next day. But the point is, these staff folks and the election judges, they don't do this every Tuesday. They don't do this even every month. They do this 3 or 4 months, and they don't have that built-in protection from their own desire to do well. We as professional people that are going to be running this office, the election, have got to be able to step in at that point, Judge, and say, I get it. I understand you're missing 3 votes or something, but it's now 7:30 and you need to be on the road. You need to get the equipment.
So we need a time frame.
We need
that
management.
your judges need,
Yeah.
you need to tell your judges, you have 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and if you don't balance by then, you need to bring everything in, and we need to do that. We need to figure that out.
That's why I'm saying we need a separation
We need a
between,
time frame period, and then somebody to be calling and saying, your time's up, bring it in.
you need quality control folks, and Vonna is by nature a quality control, quality person, but we also need this is our schedule, this is our time management, we're on the clock. Why hasn't this report been done? Why hasn't that? And that's where I see we could do some real improvement if we had somebody, quite frankly, Judge, you can know too much.
You're being
That might not work this election because I had 60 people in line. The presidential election, at one time, I had 100 people out my door. So it's gonna be, you know.
Yeah, we see
if
that
they're in
early
line
voting,
at
so we know
7
that.
o'clock, you have to give them a number and you have to vote them.
Well, I think that to me, it's, to give them a timeline, I guess the issue is as long as downtown knows that's the situation, then they know it's coming.
Okay.
Communication, that's all it is communication.
Yes, and
Well, this was a unique situation this time, at least in my poll, but I figure it happened at the others. Because of the propositions at the end, people did not come in prepared and literally stood there. And between when we checked them in to when they got voted, I would have as many people as 50 in line because we didn't have enough vote machines. So we have to deal with what we have. And it caused a tremendous delay. The one factor that's not on this sheet is when did the last voter leave? My last voter, I'm vote 20 down there, one off, that one walked, was 7:47 was when the last voter finished voting. So then, when you look, my time on finishing up and getting it down here falls into a healthy range. And that's what we don't know, but this was an odd, there were not as many early voters, so that threw more on us, and, which made the day go fast. It was wonderful, but there were some unique things in this particular one that threw the whole game later on all of us, because most of these guys, they don't come in this late. It was a unique situation.
Kat, where were you?
West Texas Rehab.
Okay.
This is either the third or fourth meeting like this I've come to, and it's always something. So, and I don't know what I don't know as a citizen, I just know that I don't know if it's management style, I don't know if it's lack of staff, I don't know if, I know you can't fire volunteers, and I know some of the volunteers that maybe don't do their job quite well enough. But this is a systemic problem, it looks like, to me.
Well, I was kind of along those lines too, this is Jeff's second, since I've been on this commission, this is the second time that Jeff has asked for early, had complaints about early results or getting results done on time. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm just saying what's there. And this is Jeff's second time that I've sat here.
I'm not trying to say what the solution is, I'm just saying, I understand these are real problems, and I don't blame the individuals involved. That's not the point. Every organization, every activity has pluses and minuses, strengths and weaknesses. But just saying, well, this was unique, this is my fourth time to have somebody say this election was unique. And at a certain point, like I said about dinner, at a certain point, you don't care what the chef's problems were, you just want your food out. And that's where we're at right now is, Edgar County managed to do it by 9:25. Midland managed to do it by whatever time there was, before 10 o'clock. We can manage this. The question is, what resources do we need to put in place? Obviously, doing the same thing over and over again and then running around saying, well, this was unique, is not a solution. If you keep making the same decision, Judge, it becomes you. So I'm saying it's not me. I didn't do this. So, and I'm not trying to point fingers, but I'm just saying, if I can do something to help, I'm happy to do that.
Well, and that's the reason I'm here, and I kind of formulated a comment after hearing several of these things. The next election, we're going to have the same situation. You're going to have some boxes that have some unique challenges. They may be different boxes. The one I voted at that day, I walked in there, 1:30 in the afternoon, was in there 5 minutes. It was Lyle Land's, and then she gets here, I said, Lyle Land, did you have a crowd at the end? And they did. They all, I think, piled in towards the end of it. You got busy after that, from my understanding. But each box is going to have that. But I think that there's a system that we can put in place that somebody is at least aware that that's what's going on. But the people that, for one, get early voting out, the boxes that are clean and easy, get those in and get them done, and have somebody managing it so the staff that knows how to cure the problems, to finish up the boxes that are having problems, for one, knows about it. And then that way can offer that assistance. And the second thing, they can concentrate on those. So if you had that, to me, that system in place, it really doesn't make any difference what happens with certain boxes and things. Because we will have a different set of problems next time, unique. But with this, what we have, that we have competence in, can be released as early as possible. And then I think people will understand if we have some unique conditions going on. The vote centers are an absolute wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful thing. But it does add a different set of complexity to it. Instead of making sure you have the old used to enough paper ballots in that box that you're always guessing at. You've got a different set of challenges. So we understand that. There will be different problems next time. Somebody's power will go out. The difference in the counting and the queuing, I just want to make sure the public understands that that's on the check-in side. That is the only thing that's hooked to the internet. So we have to depend on that connectivity for that. And depend on that, what's going on. As far as the actual votes, much different deal. They're not ever connected, they're contained within that. That's the reason your security efforts on that. But again, if we can put some personnel in place that's dedicated for nothing but decommissioning and communications and getting the stuff released, uploaded, SOS, whatever, that's their function. They don't get tired, they don't get tied up in the other problems that are going on. I think we can solve a lot of the issues that what you're concerned about, and frankly, I am too. Because I did
Absolutely
get
right.
from multiple areas about what was going on.
What we've got is we've got five staff and a number of part-time that are very experienced folks, and they're all very good, very hardworking people. The problem is their focus most of the year is ballot security, following the law, doing those kinds of things, which is great. But on election night, the game changes. And, you know, we need in my opinion, we need a person who's in that office that's watching the clock, that's watching that doesn't have that responsibility. Just like you're saying, we need somebody to do the Secretary of State input. I agree. I think that's clearly needed.
Among other duties that would be tied.
Right, and that person seemingly, I don't understand it. I mean, I don't think there's a reason why that person couldn't also be responsible for keeping our local elections results page updated as the results come through. And I'm sure there are other duties that wouldn't distract from that. But at this point, we've got a lot of people that have generalized duties in that office. And the hierarchy seems a little family instead of management. And I think that needs to be looked at, that structure within that office about who's in charge of different aspects.
That's outside of our purview of election.
I absolutely understand. I'm trying to make suggestions to make sure, because the next result, the next meeting won't be a workshop, Judge, because if we don't see fundamental structural changes, real changes that reassure us that something's going to be different, then my next election commission request is going to be a meeting to consider asking for the resignation of the current election administrator and the appointment of a new one. I don't want to do that. But that's where we're headed if I don't see changes, because I've asked for changes in the past, and I've been told it's this and it's that and it's some other thing and we need some more equipment and blah, blah, blah. And I get all that's true. I absolutely know this is true. Miss Lacey's not lying to me. Lyle Ann's not lying to me. I know they each had their challenges. But at the end of the day, the meal's still got to come out on time, and it's not. And so all I can do as an election commission person, because exactly what you're saying, I'm not a manager, I'm not Lana's boss, except that the five of us are her boss. And at a certain point, all our authority as election commission is hire or fire. I get that. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to make suggestions where I can, and I'm telling you, I can't read a statute. Other folks get these elections out on time, we don't. At a certain point, you have to say it doesn't matter anymore, and we have to make a change. I don't want to do that. I think, all stubbornness aside, there are fundamental changes we can make to resolve these issues. It includes management changes within the office as far as who's responsible for what. I think, Judge, you could help with your suggestions, and I appreciate you doing it. More staff, county staff, just more bodies would help some of these things. Frankly, I think one person who's in there that's just saying, we've goofed around with this issue long enough, get those boxes in, would be a big help. But these are just suggestions I'm making, because nobody has to listen to anything I say about this, except two things. If I don't have a better election going off, I'm going to do it myself. I hate the idea of doing it, but I will. And otherwise, as a member of this commission, if I don't see changes, then I have to tell the voters, I'm not doing my job if I don't ask for a change at the top. I don't want to do either one of those things, but I'm still being told excuses right now, and I got to tell you, I'm frustrated, because I'm not seeing a concrete plan. So I would like to call another election commission meeting to get a report from the election administrator where I see an actual concrete plan that's going to do something different than the same thing I've seen for 10 years.
I don't think there's anything ambiguous about your position. And I don't think, does anybody in here have any confusion about what Mr. Betty's asking for? I would like to see the same thing,
Yeah,
honestly. So that's the reason I've already suggested that if we can come back at some point in time fairly quickly, 2 to 3 week period of time, I would like to see that also. Is there anybody have an issue with that process?
Appreciate you, Judge.
Lon, if I can help you in any way, please,
Me too.
I will. I mean,
And on the Secretary of State's issue, let's explore those rules and where we can, I mean, sometimes the face of the statute makes it sound like you have to do it in certain steps. But then let's see, what are they doing? What's Ector County doing? Now, if Ector County is doing something wrong, let's argue with their election administrator to find out. I mean, but if they're doing some magic that gets theirs out quicker, let's find that magic and let's bring it here. I'm not using it, I just used Ector County because I had theirs up fastest, but there's other counties that are getting stuff out. How are they getting those read faster? What rules are they modifying their procedures to still follow the statute and the regulations and get that stuff out? And I'll help in any way I can. I'll argue with Secretary of State's office if that will help, but I think, you know, as far as the main number of issues, I can't help you with that. I'm not the boss. All I can do is help where you ask me. If you'll ask me, I'll be happy to help.
we always say there's 254 different answers to questions in the state of Texas. So.
Every county's got their own, there's got to be a solution we can steal from somebody else.
Just,
All right. Any other comments? Anything else? Well, let's just remain a little fluid in light of what's going on when we choose to meet again, hopefully 2 weeks from now. Our situation's a little more clear about where we're headed. You know, continue to monitor it, pray for improvement in our current situation. So we'll remain a little fluid, but I don't want to let this initiative get away. I would like to try to move forward the best we can on a lot of this. Anything else? Any other commission? Okay. It's 11:10, and I guess that concludes this workshop at this point in time. There'll be no action